Hi, I'm Haesley Cush from Living Here Cush Partners, and I want to update you following on from my note last week with regard to the proposed changes to legislation that were announced by Jackie Trad and Mick de Brewer last week. So we've aligned ourselves with the REIQ. We've been long supporters of the REIQ, but the CEO, Antonia Mercarella, is spearheading a campaign called Everybody Matters. And Antonia is doing an exceptional job. And in this link, so attached to this email, some of you might get this video by text message, but I have also emailed it to you. Please engage with your email. There's a lot of information in that email that I'm going to refer to today, and we need your support. We really need you to get involved with this campaign. The Everybody Matters campaign, it's really important that we make this distinction right from the start. We are not interested in one-sided legislation. This is not an environment where we beat up landlords, and it's not an environment where we beat up tenants. It is an environment where we work hand in hand to get through this current chapter fairly and equally. And I believe Antonia has articulated that very, very clearly. A number of you, our landlords, are also tenants. Right now, I'm a tenant in the current environment while we do a renovation on another property. This is about equal, fair, level playing field for everyone. And the proposed changes from the government are not equal. They are so heavily skewed in favour of the tenant that they will cause a knock-on effect to our landlords and their lives that is not fair and equitable. So in today's email, there are 6 main changes that we're looking for your support in, and very clear steps on how you can get involved to support them. The first one is the legislation as in its proposed form says that tenants can't defer rent to pay later, that it has to be waived. Now, the costs that a landlord has sit outside of just mortgage repayments, because the argument is a landlord can defer their mortgage. But what if a landlord doesn't have a mortgage? What if they're a self-funded retiree relying on those funds to live their life? What about when emergency maintenance happens or any maintenance happens? What about taxes that sit in place or government charges that sit in place that still need to be paid? There is more than just the deferral of a mortgage that's being offset. And it's unfair that a landlord can't negotiate with a tenant that they can defer to later. Further, a land tax waiver from the state government or a land tax deferral, so they've said 3 months deferral, 3-month waiver, doesn't apply to all landlords. You need to hit a minimum threshold. So that's just inadequate that a landlord could use those funds to offset a waiver. It's not fair and it's not equitable in the face of this environment. We need it to be fair to all parties. That's point 1 on the letter we've sent you. Point 2 is they're saying that a tenant, we as your property manager, you as a landlord, can't ask the tenant for any evidence regarding their financial hardship when they say they want this waiver, this deferral. That's unfair. You can't do that. I can't do that. In other environments, we need to provide evidence. We need to be able to say to the tenant, sure, we want to help you. Show us your separation certificate where you've lost your job. Let's see your bank accounts. Let's work through this together and see how you've been affected. In other states, they want to see a 25% reduction in income before they see a reduction in rent. The government's doing so much work with JobKeeper and JobSeeker with COVID uplifts that they want money to be passing through into the economy, and shelter is at the top of the list in everyone's world right now. Many of us working from our home, well, almost all of us working from our homes now. Rents need to be able to pay, and we need to be able to justify that the people that are getting the waivers and the deferrals actually need those waivers and deferrals. So we need to be able to ask for evidence. That's point 2. Point number 3 is in the proposed form, your landlord insurance could be affected because your policy is going to be tied to legislation. So if legislation changes where it says you've done a deal with the tenant and you can't get the rent back, or they're allowed to walk away from their lease, then you may not be eligible for insurance that you would have been eligible for. So again, we need the support because it could affect that. Point 3. Point number 4 says that if a lease comes up for renewal during this COVID-19 event, it must be extended for 6 months. Now, I assumed that meant the landlord and the tenant just had to extend. But no, in its current form, it says only the tenant gets to decide whether they want an automatic renewal. The landlord doesn't. It's just unfair. The landlord and the tenant, as they currently do, should be able to say, yes, we both want to extend, or no, we both don't want to extend. It's the landlord's property, and the choice currently sits with the landlord to offer an extension, and the tenant can take that up or they can leave. And we believe the current form is the fair form, or both maybe need to agree to a 6-month extension. If both parties had to agree, that would be fair and equitable. At the moment, a tenant can refuse entry for anything other than emergency repairs. Now, obviously, we want to care for the health of our tenants. We want to care for the health of our property managers and tradespeople. But there are times when we need to look beyond just emergency repairs. We've got smoke alarms, we've got compliance, safety certificates, we've got maintenance that needs to be carried out that may not be deemed to be emergency. We've got properties that are for sale where landlords need the money from that sale to go on to continue to function in their lives. We need to be able to perform those inspections. We would like tenants, at our request, if they don't want to let us in because they're sick or they're in self-isolation, to be able to do a virtual inspection. In the current form, we can't even request that. Again, grossly unfair to both parties. We need some more guidelines around that, which is point 5. And the last point, which is point 6, and a huge concern, is that a tenant can just walk away from their lease with 7 days notice and only be exposed to 1 week's rent as penalty. Now, I believed when I heard this last week that this was going to be in relation to tenants who are facing extreme hardship or domestic violence, and we can understand that. But for any tenant to just walk away with 7 days and the owner just to get 1 week's rent is just grossly unfair and takes that financial burden from one party and just places it on another. And we want to see the current rules, which are a normal break lease, to exist, where if a tenant does have extreme hardship, they go through the appropriate channels, apply for that, and then they're granted it, not just this rule that tenants can walk away. So this all gets voted on the 22nd of April, which is next Wednesday. So you need to move swiftly. I want you to engage with the email. Follow the steps. We're aligning ourselves with the REIQ's Everybody Matters campaign, spearheaded by Antonia Mercarella, who's the CEO. She's doing an outstanding job. We will give you a link to the letter that you can send as a property investor. We will give you the link that your friends, your family can send as a property investor supporter. Our property managers will be doing that as well. I'm going to give you a link to the REIQ Facebook page so that you can engage with Antonia Mercarella's updates as well as you're engaging with mine. She does them a couple of times a week and they are excellent. Finally, I'll send you a note next week. I won't take any more of your time here around the importance of engaging with your loan so that you are getting the cheapest and best rate at the moment. The number of you that have reached out to say how shocked you were at the difference between the rate you got simply by asking your own bank has been overwhelming. It is so easy to get a cheaper rate. You just need to ask. I encourage you, if you don't need to engage with Paul, who we recommend, Paul Hickson, he's navigating this environment brilliantly. If you just want to engage with your own bank, call them up and ask for a cheaper rate. There are rates as low as 2.09% fixed for 3 years in the market. So check your rate, make sure you're on your best rate. Thanks for tuning in. There's a lot to take in there. Please fill out these forms. We're here to support. Reach out if you need our help. And thanks for tuning in.